Ira, I'm honored that you visited a Netcom learning facility for this interview. I want to thank Savio for connecting me with you. I believe it's a lifelong opportunity for me to meet a person like you. I have been inspired by your story. When I read your book, and the more research I do about you, it just motivates me and excites me to tell your story. The first thing I want to talk to you, Ira, is that about your book, The Rise of Fashion. Please tell me a little bit about your book and why did you decide to write this book?
Because in life, there's always an opportunity in front of you if you recognize it and take advantage of it. And when I was invited to go to Bonwatella, and I was 16 years old, going on 17, and I had dropped out of high school to help my family through the Depression, and I opened the door and they said, if you fit the uniform, you get the job. Well, if I didn't fit the uniform, I wouldn't have the pleasure to be here today to have met you. Any case, when I got the uniform, got the job, I looked at the store and the customers and the management, and I said, this is where I want to be. And fortunately for me, I think I mentioned in the second book, I was smart enough standing on the floor. This was very important. This is when life takes this turn or this turn. Standing on the floor and wearing a uniform, and two good-looking men came down the floor, ready from my standing there to direct people to the 721 Club, because men are not used to women's store. These men came over, and the floor manager, we had floor managers those days, he said, that's Mr. Holmes, the president, Mr. Schul, the vice president. So being a very smart, precocious kid, maybe an opportunist, I said, good morning, Mr. Holmes, good morning, Mr. Schul. They looked at, here's a kid, first time on the job, knows how to say good morning and knows our name. I heard later they should keep this kid after Christmas. So as I mentioned, what started out as a Christmas job turned out to be a lifelong career, because the president, Bill Holmes, he decided, since he was an Irish immigrant who also grew up, he was going to be my mentor. And when I watched him come to work in the morning with a LaSalle and a chauffeur and briefcase and well-dressed and everybody saying hello, the other guys who worked with the parking service, they were taking police department and fire department, which was very honorable friend. I said, not me, I want his job. So in effect, I set my mind on that, and I explain here in this book, that's how it all started. And the book, as you mentioned, people say, what made you add lessons learned? And I don't know. I just figured, here's what happened, here's what I learned. And it took off very well, and I've been invited to different business schools and universities to lecture, and I carry it as I do. Then I found that lecturing to students, you're back to your point, and those who were interested, some came to laugh, but others stayed to ask questions, and my website has lit up like a Christmas tree, and somewhere you will ask a question about networking. Greg Furman, who teaches at NYU, he and I said connections. If Stanley Marcus, who ran Neiman Marcus, was giving a lecture, the next morning, Greg and I would be at his door, say, how do we get a job here? Students today don't think that way. They listen and they walk away. You have to recognize opportunity. So that's what this book was. I had an opportunity, I saw it, I took advantage of it, and I found a book that was given to me by the head of advertising, 1940, and I gave it to my granddaughter, and she said inside to Ira Neimark, the young spirit of Bonwatella. In other words, I was the kid in the store. They could see this bright kid, and they kept moving me along, and that's why I said, I have to write this book. Tell them what happened.
You were mentioning earlier about teaching in Columbia University, and you talked to the MBA student, and on the book you told a story that you told 39 MBAs that if you want to meet anybody from retail industry, any CEO, just let me know. I will connect you with them, and nobody took advantage of that.
I was shocked. I was an adjunct professor. I enjoyed it very much. I was still at Bergdorf's, and I invited the class to the store to show them what we were doing. And then I said, as you just mentioned, that any one of you who would like to meet the CEO of any major store in the country, I'd be very pleased to introduce you. And not one. And I realized then the lack of understanding the benefit of networking, the critical benefit of networking. Somewhere the question came up, how did I get to be to Bergdorf Goodman? And the fact is, all the retailers knew each other. So one fellow recommended that I should go to G Fox, and the G Fox belonged to a big office of other stores. And the people from B. Altman said, would I come to be with them? And then I got to know the CEO of Carter Hawley Hale quite well. I played golf with him, made sure I played golf with him, got to know him. And when they bought Bergdorf Goodman, they called me and said, would I leave B. Altman to become the CEO of Bergdorf Goodman? And of course the answer was yes. But networking, one connection to another. Actually, my mentor, who had retired, when I said I was finished working in Gladding's in Providence, I think I'm ready for something else, he called Jeb Davidson of Bloomingdale's. Unfortunately for me, Jeb Davidson was not in. He then said, get Beatrice Fox Auerbach of G Fox. Unfortunately, she was in. She said, send him over. By his recommending me to her, my meeting the B. Altman people knowing the Bergdorf people. And I don't understand why young people don't understand, take advantage of the networking.
One of the reasons you became successful is your strong ability to network with people. Is there anything else you wanna add why you think you became successful?
I hate to say this, it sounds too ideal. I had a dream that when I was at Bonwood Teller, across the street from Bergdorf's, I loved the luxury, elegant business. And then I left, and so on, with the war and all that sort of stuff. But I always admired the best there was because I was brought up that way at Bonwood's. My family, as Greg had written somewhere, were quite well off before the Depression, then we lost everything. And fortunately, I was exposed to Bergdorf's, to Bonwood's, and I said, wow, the Whitneys, the Paysons, the Astors, all the wealthy people driving up in their limousines. In those days, they had footmen as well. And I looked at Bergdorf's across the street, and it was a very high-tone, made-to-order store, and very intimidating. I never knew I'd be there, but I loved the better business. And so eventually, having a dream of wanting to be in the best store in the country, when the opportunity came, would I be there? And I think I mentioned it in the lecture. My answer was yes, but it was very easy to stand on 58th Street and Fifth Avenue and look up and see the hundreds of thousands of apartments on Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, and we would be the company store, right at the bottom. So, dreaming, inspiration, desire, ambition, all those sort of make you, and this happened. There are people like Terry Lundgren running Macy's. Terry, in talking with him, he had the same reaction. Those who aspire to it but don't have the background to make it happen will fail. And that has happened, as you know, for many, many stores. But I think those who aspire to it and have the background knowledge and ambition are pretty damn sure going to be successful.
One of the quote that you wrote in your book, that never talk to an angel when you can talk to a God.
That is so right. And let me tell you, we're just having a gas generator installed at my home. And the contractor said, we can't get through to Con Ed. They will not take care of this. It's going to be months. I got the chairman's name of Con Ed. I questioned, let me talk to the secretary. I said, you know more about the business than he does. How do I get, bingo, the thing was taking care of me. I found that any time you have a problem, you go to the CEO. Don't go to management, because each guy's afraid of his own job. And it has worked more times than not. Highly recommended. And don't be embarrassed to do it. Because Mrs. Auerbach, who taught me a great deal, said, the secretaries always know more about what's going on than the boss. So get to the secretary of the boss. That's going to never talk to angels, talk to God.
Who influenced you significantly to shape your life? I know that behind every man's success, there's a group of people.
My wife had an expression, behind every good man is another behind, meaning the wife. In any case, a few people. I would say the first major person who guided me was, as I mentioned before, is the president of Bonwood Teller. He was an Irish immigrant who spoke with a brogue, and Adam Gibble recommended him to run this business to the family who owned Bonwood's, and he was a people person, knew everybody. And a matter of fact, I think I mentioned in the book, when one of the customer service lost their customer list, he called Jim Farley, who was the Irish Mafia. He was the Postmaster General. He called Mayor LaGuardia, and that book was found within an hour. Don't talk to angels if you can talk to God. He was the first one. However, my wife and her family really inspired me. My wife's family had a small leather goods business, like Mark Cross, in Providence, and her father was a wonderful merchant who worked very hard. My wife was a buyer there, worked very hard, and we're married now 59 years, and she's always been an inspiration to me. It's most important that your partner in life, you both agree. In retailing, as you know, how to travel, and she understood because she had been a buyer of what we went through. The next person who was most impressive was Beatrice Fox Auerbach. This is, I think there are 30 pages in this book about her. She took over this major business in Hartford, a store as big as Bloomingdale's, and she said, I want the store run like I'd run my home. Neat, clean, orderly, and service. And I mentioned at the lecture, I had whip marks on my back every day. Mr. Neimark, let's go through the store together, do this, do this, do that. I worked for her 10 years. And I think of all the people I've ever worked for, she knew more about how to run a store than anyone else I've met. Passion, dedicated to making this thing right.
You mentioned that who had tremendous influence to you, the Bill Holmes, who told you, who guided you to go into merchandising versus going into advertising, because he was mentioning that you can make actually serious money in merchandising than advertising.
Well, it was important, and it's interesting because I have a granddaughter who works for Hermes, and she's doing a good job, and she's impatient. What happens next? And I said, relax, because here's what happened. I was the office boy running around, very popular at that point, and I heard the advertising department was open for a runner. I was only 18, and I didn't get the job. And I was very disappointed, and the word got to the boss. I was disappointed. That's when he called me in, and he had his eye on where he thought I would go eventually. I thought it was his protege. I found this out later. He said, merchandising is where the money is, and if you're really good, you'll be the president of a store, and advertising will report to you. So somewhere in the book here, I mentioned when I got out to Bergdorf, finally advertising reported to me. And you have to have people recommend, someone you believe in, say, here's the path to take. I don't think young people on their own can make that decision as easily without having it reinforced with someone who's already been there. And if you don't pay attention to older people who've been there, listen to them. You may want to change your ideas. But I found that Beatrice Fox Auerbach, when you asked me, I moved from Providence to Hartford, Connecticut, from a nice little business, this big store. And 2 years later, she said, I want you to run my other store. I was furious, and I wasn't going to do it. I went to my mentor, who was very old and retired, and he said, she's asked you to do something for her that's very important. If you don't do it, she'll never forget that you turned her down. And I hadn't thought of it. I was 40. I hadn't thought of it that way. Just, this isn't for me, I don't want it. And as a mentor, he turned around and said, if you don't do it for her now, she's going to remember that, and she'll always remember that. And once I did do it, and I got the store back to where it should be, then I knew she would back me up. As a matter of fact, she backed me up to the point when May Company bought the store. They wanted to put a new CEO, a new GMM in, move me out. May Company is notorious for moving people. And she said, no way, I have him, he's here, and she kept me there. That would have changed my career tremendously. So by listening to a mentor, Bill Holmes, saying she wants to do this and doing it, my whole career went in the right direction.
You have done a lot of great things in your life. You went through tremendous amount of success with Bergdorf Goodman. What is the proudest moment of your life?
Well, let me sound sentimental. When I married my wife, I was very proud because I had made a decision that was very important, and she helped, as I said, my career. I would say when I became, early on, there were three important points. During the war, I passed all the exams to become a pilot for the Army Air Corps. And I had wanted to do that since I was 12 years old because I took my first flight when I was 12 years old. And like you, anybody, you take the first flight, say, oh, this is what I want. So I set my sights on being an aviation cadet. I was a high school dropout and did not have a high school degree, much less a college degree to become an officer, but they gave exams, and don't ask me how, but I passed the exam. And I got this. So when I got that, I was so excited, I called my mother, who was not excited, by the way. And I remember I gave the man $2 to give me change for telephone. He gave me change for one. I didn't care. That was proud. I was excited. That was important. I think when I became the CEO of Bergdorf Goodman, I realized I had reached what I considered in my career the ultimate. I now was in early 50s. I knew I'd be working for possibly another 20 years, and this is where I wanted to be. And back to your point, I was dedicated and committed that this had to be a success. And somewhere people say, what would you do over? The only problem I had was a corporate problem that you will have and other people have. The owners of the business were still in the business. And I was supposed to run the business with their being there. And the Goodman family are not thinking very kindly of me because I'm a bit critical here. That the family was run like a family store. They did $38 million. Bendel's across the street was going like a house of fire. Bloomingdale's was exploding. And these people sitting there say, we're Bergdorf Goodman. And I wrote that this was not the approach that I would take. The opportunity on 58th Street and Fifth Avenue for a luxury market could be tremendous. It took a bit of time to get off the ground, but it may not have been the proudest moment, but the most inspirational moment came when I took Bergdorf and I went to Europe for the first time for Bergdorf's. And I went to the Yves Saint Laurent Couture. And I'm not buy this and buy that. On fashion, I'm okay. I have people to do that. But when I saw that collection, I said, this is the most exciting thing I've seen all my life. If I convinced Mr. Saint Laurent to come to New York to put the show on, it would light up the whole store. And I'd also Mr. Givenchy to do it and Mr. Dior, and they agreed. And unknown to me, I guess, is the Eugenia Shepard in the Post. She thought this was the greatest idea in the world. She put it in the headlines. She was also syndicated all around the country, and all of a sudden, by bringing these designers, we didn't make any money with them, but that wasn't the point. Bringing the designers, overnight the store became, look at what's going on. And at that time, Mr. Dumas of Hermes and Mr. Chauvet called, we'd like to talk to you about coming to Bergdorf Goodman. So the whole thing began to roll on one inspirational idea.
I think in your book you mentioned about a company called Circuit City. As a matter of fact, Circuit City was part of the Good to Great book where Jim Kellens talk about how great this organization is. And eventually even a great company went out of business, and I believe you made an argument there in your book that the reason Circuit City was struggling is because they replaced the experienced salespeople with inexperienced salespeople to cut cost, and which came back to harm them. Can you tell me a little bit?
Yeah, I'll tell you, but there's an expression I use. I don't think I use it about Napoleon's thought on help, that active, dumb people should be shot. I can't remember the whole phrase, but that's the head of Circuit City was not a merchant, or I don't know where he came from. They had a wonderful business going, but they made a couple of mistakes, like most companies, and it's written up in the Times today too. Too many stores, too much inventory. You could live through that by getting rid of the stores and cutting your inventories. But what he did, he realized that the salespeople were being paid too much. And he decided to let them go, which he did, and hired another level of new people. And the stock, I'll never forget it, dropped from $8 to $4 in one day, and a year later they were bankrupt, and they got rid of this guy. Unforgivable. I mean, he obviously did not know his business, did not go in the store, and think of all the people who lost their jobs. But you filter that thing down. I went to Home Depot the other day. I hadn't been to Home Depot in 5 years. My wife wanted me to get a ladder. Went to Home Depot. I found a salesman, couldn't have been nicer. Took us where we wanted to look at. Signed it. I said, send it. I'm not going to carry it in the car. He said, well, be there Tuesday. I had a telephone call before it arrived. We were ready to deliver. Would you be there? I said, I'll be here. The man arrived. He delivered it. Put it there. I had a call. Oh, he said, by the way, if you get a call about the service, I would appreciate you saying it was good. I said, very good. Sure enough, an hour later, I had a call. And this is follow through. This is wanted to know, press 1 through 5, was service good, delivery good, man good, so on and so forth. And Home Depot, to do that in a gigantic business and follow through like that is remarkable. Yeah, it's a remarkable business. I know Marcus, that lives in Boca Raton, a friend of my family, but I'll write to him. That's how to do it. Remarkable. But that's back to Circuit City. The lack of understanding not only who your customer is, how they want to be treated, is so simple. But people are too busy opening stores, running around, and so on.
And I believe you were mentioning, sharing a story on the event about your visit to CVS, where you weren't treated properly by the customer, and then you're sharing your experience.
It was very funny. Again, my wife said, I can't find this particular hair thing, whatever she was looking for. And she said, I know I once bought one for CVS on this phone. So I said, okay, Sunday afternoon, let's go. I'd never been in a CVS before. Obviously, the place was gigantic. And not a salesperson or anyone, not anyone to help. And she eventually found it, went to the desk, asked the fellow, is this what we want? He didn't know. And I marvel at the stupidity of executives who can open businesses like that and not have the brains to figure, if a woman walks into the store, a good salesman will say, as I mentioned in Radio Shack, I have this, but I also have this, which will make that better. And a proper salesman, a professional salesperson, can trade you up without you even knowing about it, and yet being very happy about it. And that to me is the single biggest, greatest opportunity for business today. Because as I said, to me, it's a lost art. A lot of people you talk to don't understand it.
When you took over the Bergdorf Group, and the reason the Bergdorf became successful, one of the reason is that you understood the opportunity exists for Bergdorf Goodman. You saw a huge market there, so you went after that opportunity. Second thing, you mentioned that you went in and built relationship with the fashion designers and used their brand to increase the brand of your company. And by reading your book, I also saw that when you took over the company, you try to reposition this organization. You keep mentioning somewhere that company was old, dull.
It was old, dull, expensive, and intimidating. And the trick was to make it young, exciting, expensive, and intimidating. It isn't for everyone.
I love that quote.
And also, when we have to do a market study, and I'm not in favor, you would have read where I say focus groups and other myths, you have to know your customers. So we decided, or I guess I decided, that I liked the customer, again, back to my growing up at Bonwatella. The customer goes to best restaurants, best hotels, best resorts, belongs to best clubs, should have a store that repeats that. And that was the definition of the store and the market strategy. You didn't need all kind of information. So the whole thing from Pat the doorman, who was legendary then, the wrappers and packers downstairs, salespeople all through the store, we are dedicated to treat these customers like they expect to be treated, not how you want to be treated, how they expect to be treated. And lo and behold, for the person who didn't do that, if I saw it happen on the floor, then how dare you, you're working for the store, if you don't like it, you go work for the competition. Give them aggravation, don't give it to me. I must say, that was a dedicated feeling, either do it my way or, I guess the expression today is the highway. But I was determined to have the store do that. Now, the reason the family, I said I would have liked to have had better relations with the family, is on the main floor was the wife of the owner had an art needlework department. And art needlework is yesterday and sure doesn't belong on the main floor. There were 4,000 square feet of shoes on the main floor, worst place in the world. So everything had to be rearranged. And every time I made a movement, the family would say, why did you do this? And I explained, I said, why did your company buy the store if you want to make these changes? And I said, what do you think they bought the store for? But it never quite made it until the money began rolling in. They got an arrangement on rental was 5% of sales. When the sales went to, when I started 38 million to 50 million, 75 million, 100 million, 150 million, the big checks began rolling in. It now does, the women's store is over 500 million, and the men's store should be 90 million. So we're talking 600 million over. And they get 5% every year. That's $25 million coming in every year, not bad. They then began to back off, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. It took a little while, but it's more gratifying the fact that the owners who called me aside and said, "You're not relating to, I'm Carter Hawley Hale, you're not relating to the family who built this business, and they're unhappy. And if somebody else wants to sell their store, they may talk to Andrew Goodman." And I said, "Gentlemen, you want me to build a store? If not, I recommend you get somebody else." And they backed off. Because if you started catering to Mr. Goodman, God bless him, you'd be back where you started.
Ira, you're so right. One thing I find out, there's a lot of founders out there, entrepreneurs who start their own business. They're very good, they have the passion, they're very, very good at starting the business, but once the business goes into a level, the business outgrew them, they don't have the management or leadership skills to take the company to the next level. So one of the best thing to do for those founders is that either you develop your skills in order to take the company to next level, or surround yourself with the right people who has those skills, or step back and bring a CEO in who actually can take this company to next level.
It's a very, very important point that you make, because someone said to me, "Why do some stores make it and other stores don't? Why did Bonwood Teller go out and Bergdorf Goodman is still there? Why did B. Altman go out?" and so on. It brings to at a certain point, if the wrong decision is made, who's going to own the business, who's going to run the business, it'll go downhill and go out. Lord & Taylor have gone through a lot of management, but they still have owners who can make investments, and that's what's happening now. B. Altman didn't have a future, never looked beyond 25 years. A major store like that going out. Bonwood Teller went from one person to another. Bergdorf's owned by one family, sold to Carter Hawley Hale, sold to General Cinema, sold now to Texas Pacific. Each one made a major investment, and so it's continuing. If he didn't sell to Carter Hawley Hale, the Goodman family, as you point out, the business would have closed, I think. They would have had a real estate, put a hotel there or something. So continuity depends upon management, investment for the future. Look into the immediate, never held.
One thing I'm finding out, when a CEO usually spend their time, some CEOs spend a lot of their time to develop and formulate the strategy. Some CEOs spend a lot of time executing on the strategy. I see also CEOs spend time on people management, people development, and of course a CEO must do continuous self-development. When you are the CEO, where did you spend most of your time? What was your day-to-day activity? I know you're big into customer service. You are connecting with the customer.
The strategy for Bergdorf's, once, as I mentioned, that Yves Saint Laurent, Dior, Givenchy came in, the strategy obviously appeared to be where Bloomingdale's had a lot of the lines, but it was a major department store, and Bendel's had a lot of lines, but it was a small store, that Bergdorf's was just large enough, larger than Bendel's and smaller than Bloomingdale's, to give it the right look. So we then decided, I said earlier, that I don't pick the styles. I had a fashion office, and the fashion office run by Dawn Mello. If she would say, "We must have Fendi, we must have Yves Saint Laurent," my job was spend as much time as possible with the Fendi family or the Yves Saint Laurent people. And I had Yves Saint Laurent, the Rive Gauche, the owner of it in Paris, trying to convince him to sell Bergdorf's, and we're having dinner, and I was sitting in a chaise and the chair in a very nice restaurant. He was sitting here. He said, "Well, let's go." I said, "I'm not letting you out of here." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We finished dinner. I want a decision from you right now before we leave. Do I get it, do I not?" "You get it. Let's go." But you had to spend time with each of these people. The Fendi family, the stories in this book, of the five sisters and meeting with us, and Fendi just wrote me a letter.
A strong negotiator.
Yeah, well, we had to make sure that they were happy. So happy that I just received a letter last week from Carla Fendi, because I sent her this book, and she's in the front cover, and so how please, would I please come to Rome with my wife to relive the experiences we had before and enjoy what we've done. Because they're very successful. She sold a business for $900 million and so on. But she remembered the times we spent, and my answering your question a long way, I got very involved with every designer to the point where we had relationships that were very, very important. Giorgio Armani, when I first met Giorgio, as I said, he had a hotel with a light bulb hanging down, And Mr. Neimark, could you please give me a check so I could buy the fabric? Today he's a multi-billion, not a millionaire, billionaire. So to answer your question, long way, I spent a tremendous amount of time with every designer, there as well as here, to make sure if I did have them, I didn't lose them to Bloomingdale's.
And because of that relationship, you were able to sign a lot of exclusive deals and semi-exclusive deals.
You're a good merchant. That was the idea.
Yeah.
How do we keep this for Bergdorf's alone? Now, today the whole thing has changed. There's very little exclusivity. But you have to do it to the customer. Why do they want to shop in my store? What's different? What's better? And that's what I worry about when I visit Bergdorf's, because nothing is as you left it. It's got much bigger. Does twice the business now than when I left. But nothing should get that big that it becomes an impersonal business. It's a personal business. And everyone should be greeted and taken care of accordingly.
You mentioned during the conversation that having the right experienced salespeople is key to success of your business. How did you select those salespeople? Did you have a criteria or framework that you used to hire them?
Well, I actually didn't select the people individually. I selected executives. The salespeople were selected by Marita O'Day, who's in the book. And Marita and I would have lunch maybe at least once every week, maybe once every other week. Across from Bergdorf's is Cipriani, and I'd have lunch there. I could be back and forth an hour. It'd save a table for me. Or a Japanese restaurant down the street. I'd always have Marita with me for that, and I'd have a PR lady and so on, and have lunch with them. I never had lunch with a friend. It just didn't dawn on me. And we would talk about who we are, what we are, how we are, what we're going to do. And it was indoctrinated in the personnel department, what it was I expected. And if I went through the store and saw someone who didn't dress properly, look properly, or handle it properly, Marita, what are you doing? Take care of it immediately. And the same thing with my PR lady, Susie Butterfield. Would have lunch with her every once or twice a week. What are we doing, and what is our competition doing, and studying very carefully. So I think leadership is indoctrinating the people that you work with to understand what you want. If they understand what you want, they belong with you. So that was the executives that I would work with. And she knew what it was that I wanted in salespeople. And we had salespeople who made a lot of money because we took them off the regular basic salary and put them on a commission with a drawer. And we had about 300 salespeople. We lost about 100, didn't need them. And these 200 there made all kinds of money and they were very happy. We had to hire another level of management to make sure the salespeople weren't fighting with each other who gets the customer. On a commission basis, that could happen. Again, mainly to keep calm, cool.
So what I hear from your conversation on the top level, one thing you mentioned, a leader must have the ability to communicate organizational vision, organizational purpose, who we are, what do we value, what direction we want to go in, what type of culture that we want to promote within the organization. And based on that leadership skills, that you want to hire people who matches with your organizational culture and values.
Yes, a good example of that is the men's store opened in 1991, August, September. Unfortunately, the recession started in July. However, an awful lot of young men who worked in Wall Street were looking for jobs. So in staffing the men's store, we staffed the store very heavily with young men from Wall Street because they would understand the customer, not like that silly focus group thing, what are we going to do? It made sense. You have a man who understands quality and appreciates it, and a customer understands, and you put the two together. Sometimes you walk into an expensive store and the salesman, they don't understand, it doesn't match. It's scary. So, but if you can match the salesperson to the customer, that is critical. Key to a question someone asked me, well, how do you know which executive to hire? And I found it very easy. If the executive thinking of his ambition or her ambition is the same as mine and had the fundamental background to accomplish it, fine. One executive I examined, big guy from Bloomingdale's, when I had to have an assistant GMM to take my place, and moved up as president at G. Fox. This fellow in the interview, and he's a very smart guy, he kept, when he talked about when he retired, we had a conversation, he's looking forward to, the guy must have been in his 40s. The other fellow from Bloomingdale's, his name was Bob Suslow. And Bob's thinking was like my thing, but two of us were like that. We could finish each other's sentence. And I knew his thinking was very much like mine. He became the head of got my job at G. Fox. He became head of Famous Bar, became head of Saks Fifth Avenue, became a British American Tobacco, and he bought Kohl's when it was a small family store in Wisconsin. Why did I think he'd be successful? Because he had the same ambition, knowledge, inspiration. You can just tell when you talk to a guy. When someone goes off the tangent, they'll work for the competition.
During this conversation, you mentioned that Bergdorf Goodman was founded by an immigrant. And I'm personally an immigrant from Bangladesh. I came to this country almost 21 years ago. And I'm proud of what, even though I'm not super successful, I'm still proud of what I have achieved in this country. I have created over the years hundreds of jobs. So what's your position about the U.S. immigration policy? Do you think that immigrants are contributing to the success of this country, and there is a stigma out there that immigrants are taking away the job? Do you agree with that notion?
No, it never bothered me, black, white, pink, or purple. Because Beatrice Fox Auerbach, again, back to Hartford, Connecticut. She said, I have a colored maid at home, I have nurses for my children, I have this for my gardener, and so on. So I want my store to be the same way. G. Fox and Hart was the first store to put black mannequins in the windows. And I learned from her that no matter what color of the skin, it's the brain that matters. And if a person can articulate clearly who they are, what they are, then I would hire them. I'm talking about executives at this point.
I wanted to share a story with you. I visited Bergdorf Goodman day before yesterday, and I met one of the sales managers. Manager name is Alan Baer, and I believe even when you're the CEO, he worked for the company. And I was asking, what do you think about Ira? And he was saying that Ira was a dreamer. He was a visionary. He thinks highly of you. He believes that you are extremely inspiring. He mentioned that you understood the business inside out. You had strong knowledge about the business. Even reading some of the comments about your book, some of the people were saying you have strong integrity. You are a trustworthy person. So that brings my next question. Is that what do you think makes a great leader?
I think the people have to feel that the leader, the people who work for him, have to feel he knows what it is he wants to do and knows how to do it. And that gets confidence that we're on the right track. It's very much like in the Army. If the war is taking place, if your commander knows what's going on, you don't mind going ahead, but if you don't want to do it. In retailing, it's such a personal business with salespeople relating to the customer directly, and the salespeople can relate to the CEO and the CEO to the salespeople if he would travel. And I say, just following when I had lunch last week with Bob Chavez, and Bob began, and they won a wonderful business, Hermes. It's an incredible business. Their profit is phenomenal, their sales are great, and they have great customer base. And Bob said, I visit the stores, I know every salesperson, 26 stores, they know him. They have confidence in him because he's a manager, a professional manager. And a professional manager touches all the bases. And salespeople can see if someone doesn't know what he's doing, they can see it before you can, before you recognize it. I don't know who the salesperson, I'd like to thank her.
Yeah, and actually it's him, Alan Baer, and he worked for the company for a long period of time. As a matter of fact, I met two other people there. One of the guy named, I believe, Patrick, and he wasn't there while you were the CEO of the company, but he knows about you, and he said this exact word, "Oh, Ira, the legend," and I felt good going there, and I felt so proud that I'll be interviewing
Well,
you.
very nice. There's one fellow. When I went to look at the books a couple of months ago, and I think they were missing, and the salesman, Bob Baer, I think his name was, and I said, what's happening? He said, well, I'll get the books out, I'll take care of this, I'll take care of that, so on and so forth. And I thanked him very much. I wrote to Jim Gold in Dallas and said, Jim, you have a great guy there. He's just a salesman. He qualifies for being more than that. And he got back to this fellow. And next time I was in, the fellow said, gee, Mr. Neimark, thank you very much. And I think that's like dropping pearls of wisdom as you travel around. If you can benefit someone, I have a plumber who came to the house, did a fabulous job the other day, and I wrote to his boss and said, this guy's great. It also benefits you, because then when you call them next time, they're there whenever you want them. But that's very nice, because I saw the salespeople every day. I get to the office at 9 o'clock in the morning, exactly at 9. My secretary used to say the train was on time. She knew the door would open. I'd be there. Cleaned all my paperwork, telephone calls, messages by 10:30. Then I was through the store, walking, not just for joy, it was just walking. Is this right, this right? Hello, good morning, what's wrong? And they knew that I was interested in them, and they were interested in what I was doing. And it's a relation. And the thing that bothers me, when people say that we have 50 stores, like I mentioned at your talk, I don't care if you have 100 stores. You have a jet, they give you a jet, then use it. 1 day a week is all you have to invest, as you mentioned earlier.
So if I understand what he said, a strong leader must know their people. A strong leader must be confident and knowledgeable in order for other people to be relevant.
Must be knowledgeable about his business and his merchandise. Not, oh, it's how is this doing? Why not? What are you doing? In the merchandise system, which is outlined here, that I had, if something is bought by a buyer, like if this nice young lady became the Donna Karan buyer, and I mentioned at your session, we would say you're allowed to buy X number of units, and we'll watch it very carefully. If one style did not move, it had to go. The average buyer would never want you to mark it down. Oh, it'll sell. But by doing that, we taught them that you buy merchandise with a certain length of, and then it has to go, because we want to be the newest of any store in the city. And the salespeople are smart. They're the smartest one in the store. They know this guy knows his business. Don't play games.
One thing I want to talk with you is that I found out in my personal life, I learned more from the failures that I went through. And my goal is that take the lessons from those mistakes and apply it to my next business so that I don't repeat the same mistake. So I want to find out some of your failures.
I was hoping you'd ask that question. When I came back from the war, I was put in charge of the Merchandise Control Office at Bonwell Teller. And that meant making budgets for buyers and planning and all of that. But I wanted to be a buyer. I wanted to see what it was all about. Because every time I'd give the buyer a plan, she said, I can't do this, your plan is too difficult and so on. So I wanted to be a buyer. At Bonwell Teller, they made me a buyer of the blouse department. I didn't have a clue how to be a buyer. I was an unmitigated disaster. The only thing I did well was at night, I would go to the better dress department and I'd take a dress and look at and sketch the top. And I had blouses made that nobody else could have. That's the only smart thing I did. But other than that, my sales were poor, my markdowns were high, my assortment, it was a disaster. When I look back, but I learned from it, like you. So my mentor had resigned and went to become the head of Jane McCreary, a low-end store by comparison. And he said, would I come down and be the buyer there? I was even worse, because I kept thinking that the size 6, 8, 10, which is important uptown, 8, 10, 12, 14 was important downtown, and I bought 6, 8, 10. I was killed. I decided that I didn't know, I had taste, but didn't know how to merchandise. It's one thing telling people what to do, but doing it myself, I was a failure. Fortunately for me, when I went to an employment agency that was recommended by the secretary of my mentor, she sent me to Gladding's in Providence as a divisional merchandise manager. I made sure, as you, the mistakes that I made would not happen there. And so looking back, and I think I mentioned in my book, with everything I did, I may have been successful. As a buyer, I was a failure. But I learned that I bought too many styles, and all the mistakes I made sure the buyer did. So I benefited greatly from my failure.
I want to thank you for taking your time to come over here. It's a great pleasure for me. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the most important day of my life, because I really wanted to meet you.
You do me great honor, and I'm awed. First of all, you're much too modest. I went to your website and I read this very carefully. The future that you have, if you read my mentoring page, is we're all in the same direction. That the talent is there, the potential is there, the opportunity is there. How can you put it together to make it work? And you're off and running, in my opinion, on that. And I think you've accomplished it. And I'm delighted to be part of it and be able to contribute to anything I can to help your success.